Friday afternoon, folks, downtown Honolulu. Welcome to our show, Where the Road Leads. Ted Ralston, your host here. As you know, our show is defined so well by the quality and the insight of the guests we have on, and I think we've topped the charts on this particular episode. So the episode here is where cyber meets paradise, and we'll get into that in a minute. But first, I'd like to introduce our guests, General Darryll Wong, who runs the Hawaii National Guard as well as the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency. We have Arnold Kishi, who is the president of InfoGuard here in Honolulu, which is an agency or a partnership with the FBI in information sharing. And we have, by Skype, we have John Mullen in San Francisco, who's the CEO of in the private industry, Promia Corporation, which does cybersecurity management for the infrastructure. So that's our guest today, folks, and I'll just give a very short introduction to why we're what we're doing today. It's a bit different from what we've done in the past, but we coming to the end of the year, and the emergency management folks and the National Guard have been involved in a lot of activities this year that perhaps a higher level of activity than we've seen before. Next year we have a biggest yet, Makani Pahili, I believe, coming together. So a lot of action going on. General, what's your looking in the rearview mirror? What did you see coming up this year, and how do we look at that as it leads into next year from an emergency management perspective?
So Ted, as you know, the Adjutant General here in the state of Hawaii has the National Guard, Army and Air. He has emergency management under him, and he also has Homeland Security. So as I talk to our department, how do you bring it all together into one form? How are they all interrelated? Because it is all interrelated. Because people look at the National Guard, where does it play in emergency management? So the National Guard really was created to learn and to go to war and train, but it was also designed to cut over to domestic ops. Everything you train in for contingency, you're going to use in the domestic ops. So for the last year, what I've tried to do as the Adjutant General is to update. Well, the biggest thing was update our 60-year-old HRS laws, where we were not operating according to how we normally would, according to the HRS. So basically, we just made the law operate the correct way that we're doing. In the old way the law is written, all the power for emergency management rests with the governor. The governor gave it to me, and then I made the mayors my deputies, which doesn't work that way. So what we've done is now all the mayors they pretty much have defined powers, and the governor has defined powers. The state and the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency really is in support of all the county mayors. They run their islands, they tell us what they need, and we provide it for them. So that is a major change that we made. The other thing was also bringing together all the emergency managers across the state to continue to collaborate with one another. And the biggest thing that hopefully we will finally accomplish is here on Oahu, where our mayor and our governor will pretty much operate out of a combined joint emergency management center. They will have separate areas to manage their functions of city and state, but when they need to come together, there'll be a common area where they'll come together versus having to do it by VTC or drive. So this is a huge victory for us.
This is a big change. That you've sort of re-socialized the whole fabric of emergency management in a way that's more consistent with local empowerment, which is interesting because that leads right down to the neighborhood watches and things, which are starting to get strength in Waimanalo and Hau'ula and other locations. And it also sounds like collaboration.
Yes.
And collaboration is obviously very important in the more complicated environment we've created for ourselves.
So people don't understand that, we're an island community, but even an island community, we're separated by ocean. And so we don't have freeways for Oahu to support Maui, Kauai, or the Big Island. So we even have a problem internal to Hawaii that doesn't exist in the other 48 contiguous states. So if you're in Arizona, you're going to get support from California and all the states that can come there by land. Everything that's coming here is going to be by sea and air, but it's still going to take a lot of time. Whereas on the mainland, the support they get is going to be hours away, not days away that we have. So we as an island community have to be much stronger than they are in the continental United States. And as you talked about Waimanalo, each community needs to understand their frailty or their strengths and their weaknesses, and then we can help strengthen their weaknesses.
Let me just interrupt for a minute and say that folks watching this, we can take questions on hashtag Delta Charlie Bravo Alpha, hashtag DCBA. Send your questions in and we'll address them as best we can here from the table. And I hope that this discussion, which we haven't even gotten very far into it yet, leads to a continuation of this type of discussion over the next year, once a month or something like that, as topics become appropriate to discuss with the public. So re-socializing, aligning, and generating collaboration framework among the agencies is an essential issue, more essential than other locations. And that leads to the physical infrastructure, that leads to the supply chain. All the factors that are part of the resilience equation are unique here in Hawaii. And you've created a concept called Hawaii Exemplary State, along with Ken Kaneshiro, that looks at that at least at the environmental level. And maybe that's a great model for the other aspects beyond just the environment. You say a few words about that, and then we'll pick that up at a later session.
Well, you know, Ken and I have always talked about it, and it's a systems approach of, you know, him teaching education. To me, it's a systems approach on how we do emergency management, where there is not any one single solution. You have to bring everything together and understand everyone's interdependency and how we teach it across the islands. Because at the end of the day, this thing has to continue to mature. So our kids in K through 12 need to understand the frailty of our islands, because they're going to be the new generation to take over. This generation needs to maintain what we have and continue to keep it so that our next generation coming up. So there has to be a constant learning. There has to be everyone understanding their interdependencies with one another.
That's a fantastic picture, and I just want to offer to the folks watching this who may look at these complicated and complex interactions and I'm wondering where they're coming from. They're coming from how we've urbanized ourselves, but there are methods that allow us to perceive what these issues are, how to look at the interfaces and work them. We'll get into cyber in a minute, but I just want to tell our audience that what you're hearing out of General Wong here is really the visions of a totally visionary guy in terms of seeing these pictures, expressing them, and putting complex issues that are important to all of us together in a way that we can begin seeing how they affect us personally. And a Renaissance man might be the better description of the general here.
I don't know about that. They always say pilots are the dumbest guys here.
Well, yeah, he is a pilot, okay? Can't do much about that. But on the other hand, even with the big visions that are going on here, let me tell you that Darryll does have his feet in the sand. He paddles outrigger, and won't say for what club, but participating at that level is an essentially important part of making sure we don't get too disconnected from the small piece to the large picture. And you've outlined once before your vision of the Alawai as an incredible integrating function with the paddlers and the sort of the life of the Ahupua'a there. So we'll have a discussion about that later at some time. But the collaboration framework you've spoken of and the need for collaboration, that leads into the reason that Arnold is here. This subject called cyber that we've all heard a little bit about, probably have been affected in some way or other to a small degree, but we could be affected to a very large degree. And the isolation and the separation that you've referred to is certainly something that the cyber aspect has to be considered in regard to. So if I can hold off on that, let's just take a quick break here and then get to Arnold on the whole role of cyber here and how we deal with cyber issues in the future. So yeah, and John Mullen from San Francisco will join us at that same time. So we'll be back in 30 seconds, folks.
Hi, I'm Jay Fidel. I'm host of Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, which is our flagship show, which plays 4 to 5 p.m. every Wednesday. And the supporters of that show are Hawaii Energy Policy Forum and Hawaii Energy. And luckily enough, we have representatives of both of them right here today to tell you more about what they think about the show. Sharon Moriwaki at my left is co-chair of Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. And she goes first. Sharon?
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. I'm so glad that we have this Hawaii, the state of clean energy. This was 2 years ago when we started this, and we have continued it because it's so important, and there's so many developments happening across the state. And we hope you'll tune in every Wednesday, 4 to 5. It's wonderful.
And Ray is Hawaii Energy. Ray, what is your thought about the same subject?
Well, I agree completely with Sharon that we are talking about every Wednesday, 4 to 5. We talk about some of the most important subjects that are affecting the islands now and into the future. Energy, clean energy, we need it. We often run into new ideas that we had not thought about before. We did just today, and I think we're going to have more of that in the future. So come on down and watch us 4 to 5 on Wednesdays, and we'll see what happens.
We'll see you then. Aloha.
Aloha.
Friday afternoon, folks, welcome back to the second segment of our show, Where the Road Leads. Cyber in Paradise is our topic for today. We've got General Wong, runs the Hawaii National Guard and the Department of Emergency Management in Hawaii, and Arnold Kishi, who is the head of InfoGuard in the state and dealing a lot with infrastructure protection. We heard a lot about collaboration, and we heard a lot about the somewhat fragility of our isolated infrastructure here in Hawaii and the importance of collaboration, the importance of cyber as it plays into it. Can you tie together, General Wong, the nature of the infrastructure and how that ties into cyber? And then we'll bring both John Mullen and Arnold in on the specifics of the cyber aspect and what we need to think about.
So if you look, Senator Inouye's always said energy security is economic security. I mean, that's just one aspect. So if you look at the state of Hawaii and everything that it needs for the people here and the economy to thrive, you look at energy, you look at water, you look at sewage. I mean, those are just three basic things, as well as food. So if you look at those four, you know, how do we look at any? We can't defend all of the things, but if we look at how they're all interrelated, then you can see a specific node in the electrical side or in the water side or in some other side that we really need to defend, because we need to understand its interdependency, because that one node may cause a catastrophic event versus something else. We won't have enough physical defense as well as cyber defense. There's just not enough money in this world. So we really need to define what is important and what will cause catastrophic effects, and really put our money and our energies into those, and then start backing off. It's amount of what risk do you buy down?
And the thing that connects us all together is the communication system, the information sharing, the general world of cyber. Such a complicated world. That's why we have Arnold here, why we have John on the phone. So Arnold, give us your view, if you will, of how the cyber situation here in Hawaii lays down today, and where the threats might be, either man-made or natural to that, and how we as people, as the individuals in the state, need to start being aware, thinking, and maybe planning for some kind of action.
I see. Okay, thanks.
Don't
Dave.
feel any pressure, but I just...
Well, let me comment on the role of InfoGuard first and how it relates to what General Wong just discussed. The InfoGuard program is a national community outreach of the FBI. And as president of the organization, that's a volunteer role elected by the members. We provide outreach into the critical infrastructures that's defined in the state of Hawaii. So nationally, the FBI has identified 16 critical infrastructures in most communities that they would like to help protect and safeguard. And these are pretty much the same ones that General Wong is talking about. And since the our program is primarily working with the CISOs and the Chief Security Information Officers on the cyber side, similarly, General Wong is working with the CEOs and the executives of the same organizations to create the awareness of the cyber threats and what they could do. So we're working with the same organizations, passing on the same message to different levels. And hopefully this will permeate from the top to the bottom of an organization to create awareness and of what the threats are and awareness of what the remedies might be and the the education that might be required to create this awareness within those groups.
That's fantastic. So what General Wong's talking about is the getting the people, the relationships together, and the understanding and the shared awareness, which is collaboration. And on your side, you're dealing with the actual physical interfaces or electronic interfaces and system connectivity issues and things of this type, potential fault paths and this sort of thing.
Right. So one of the things that we're working on right now is to have the people in the different critical infrastructures actually talk to each other. So have the folks from the electric utilities speak to the folks in water, because they each have their own vertical, but to set up a communication where something happening in one can be shared with something in the other, that's our objective. And ultimately, if we can get all of them to share information and understand what each other's respective roles are, that would be a great win for all of us.
Two thoughts that come to my mind hearing that is, one is that if this could tree up into a virtual test center of some kind where all these cyber-related activities are modeled in a supercomputer, just like we're doing for the UAVs. And think of how training and system development and awareness could occur in that environment. It becomes part of Makani Pahili, I suspect, if you were to push it that far. Secondly, on the smaller scale, beneath those 16 specific areas, if we could tie into the community in some way, such as Waimanalo, and maybe there's an auxiliary to InfoGuard that could be considered that lets the community tie in some way. I'm just suggesting that, but I see those two pictures, you know, the two bookends of how to capitalize on this. Let's ask John. John, throwing you into the breach here, as a professional who executes in this area, what are your thoughts on the conversation that we've heard so far?
Well, I think it's great. We work with InfoGuard here as well in the Bay Area, so I am familiar with a lot of the approaches. And I'm very happy to hear what you're doing. I think you're doing a great job, particularly with those islands and the water between them, and then so far from the mainland. There's big challenges. But also, you pointed out earlier, there's not enough money in the universe to take care of all the details. And so, as you said, the right kind of collaboration and the right kind of model can attack the most critical and catastrophic items first. And that's really what you're doing. Now, I just want to add, there are already some models. There's some methodologies that have been developed by top universities to approach issues like this. And one of them is called Octave. It came out of Carnegie Mellon University. It's actually a process by which people go together and they ask certain questions and answer certain questions. And from that process, you get a very crystal idea of what are the most critical assets, where they are, how they interact, how they depend on each other. And then you can apply your money to the best benefit and also get the most critical things soonest, and then see how you can work out. I had one other point I needed to make. It's not just the electronic controls, it's really vigilance, the human vigilance, and awareness and training. But you know, we have technologies and they have holes in them, but not only that, they change a lot. You know, you're always updating certain things. And if you update one and you don't update the other, then a new hole can happen on the one you didn't update. So it's a constant battle, and part of it is not just the testing in the lab, although that's critical. It's also the awareness and the vigilance of the people working together. So I think you guys are going about it the exact right way, and I'm really proud of seeing what you're doing.
And what you just said, that last statement about the awareness and such, leads right back to the community, which is that auxiliary we're speaking of here, and devices like this, which John knows well, have potential downsides to them as much as they're functional to us. Can you say a few words about that, John? What's happening in this world of personal communications and how they can be used against us?
Well, I think, you know, the device you have there in front of you, the drone, there's a lot of challenges. There's privacy challenges, there's security challenges, there's safety challenges. They fall out of the sky and hit somebody in the head. So there's physical components, there's logical components, there's safety and privacy. But they can all be done. They can all be handled, in my opinion, with proper use of policy and then also controls within the standard devices. And for example, something like a safety parachute type of glide path if the device stops or hurts so that people don't hit you on the head. But the other one is they can be useful for things like abductions, where people are abducted or something. The drones can be very, very useful to interdict the perpetrator to help, not just as a negative toy out on the street, but can actually use to help us.
As we've talked before, and I've talked to Arnold about, I think there's a real strong correlation here between the security aspects of cyber and the methods and models and high-level math and things that are required to manage that, and the drones, as John points out. This is just another piece of cyber gear in that regard. So there's a great tie-in, and if we can solve the problem in cyber, we can transfer it to here, or elements of solution here can transfer to cyber. It's a great connection. If I can ask John one more question, and Arnold, would it be reasonable for us to have a conversation with the Carnegie Mellon people that John knows about, just as another way to make a connection here to capitalize on whatever they've been able to do? Would that be useful to you?
Sure. I think any collaboration, other insights from outside is always welcome.
John, can you help us put that together?
Sure. They're a federally funded research organization, so I think that you're not going to get a big cost item here. But it's called Octave, O-C-T-A-V-E. It's a very powerful methodology, and I can certainly help facilitate that.
Let's start with a telephone conference call or something with the Octave people and see what is there worth picking on.
Okay, great.
And maybe generate some student programs in the K through 12 area for very level, early level awareness, and then at the university level and such, and see if we can capitalize on this in some way. Okay, I think we have a question here that's come in from one of our listeners. It was, how do you protect yourself online? And let me turn to Arnold first, knowing the current situation here in Hawaii. How do you protect yourself? I think that refers to online banking and buying books on Amazon and this sort of thing. So, your thoughts on that, sir?
That's a broad question that could take many shows to answer.
All right.
But I guess the analogy I would use is, if when you're online, think of yourself walking down the street and deciding which alley you will take, a brightly lit one or a dark alley or one that's maybe not so well. You make choices, and you have choices online. Sometimes it's not evident that you're going to a site that might be dangerous, that might have malware and other kinds of viruses that might infect your machine. But it's just, again, vigilance and awareness of what you're doing, where you are, and having a sense of, or second sense as to whether you're doing something you shouldn't.
Is that something we could have turned into a community awareness activity of some kind, as maybe a component of InfoGuard? How to, just for the communities, Waimanalo, for example, our community, just things that the people in the town need to be aware of, and how to determine these potential vulnerabilities and such.
Right. Well, that's a good idea. Now, one of the things, not only InfoGuard, but other organizations involved with computer security have been doing is working with nonprofits, community organizations to set up an education process and awareness, just to have a discussion about this. The intent is not to make these people technical experts on protecting yourself, but just be aware of the risk you take when you have certain kind of behavior when you're online.
So how do we bring that up to the CERT people, or the HART people? I think would be the right place to bring that in.
I think, as Arnold was saying, these are really basic things. As you say, you may not open sites that you don't know who's there. You make sure your computer has the most updated malware. I mean, there's going to be a cost to getting on the internet, because the internet was designed to be totally open. And so, I mean, it was designed to be open, and now people are using it against you. So I think it's just one more part that you can teach the IT side of it, which, a lot of us like social media, but there's also dangers in social media. And then online banking is a whole new thing, as Arnold was saying.
So we can take this offline, but have a discussion with the HART people, which Margie's involved in, and see if we can build a reasonable activity here. John, what's your thoughts on that? And the question was, how do we protect ourselves online?
Well, I think a couple things. You brought one up, is make sure that your systems are updated all the time. Make sure they're current as much as possible. Also, there are some public awareness outreach facilities from DHS, from FEMA. I know there's some things that have been put out and put together from those organizations. We can probably get straight from them as far as awareness, public awareness. There's actually, I think, a public awareness month, Cyber Month, one of the months in the year. So there's a lot of programs that have already been put together that you can get. One thing that I know a lot of people that I've worked with have done is they keep when they're buying things online, they'll either have a very low limit debit card or some sort of protection that they can't be completely taken over. So just some basic ideas, just as Arnold said, it's common sense, but it's good to talk about them and get them out and make people very aware of them.
Interesting, and as you're thinking here, I'm thinking that NDPTC, which is right down the street from us here, we ought to have a conversation with them about course material associated with that exact issue. How do you protect yourself online? Because we're all going to need it. And in particular, in a disaster situation, I suspect we become more vulnerable than normal because people are not paying attention to things as carefully as they perhaps otherwise would.
Well, even WebEOC, which a lot of the emergency managers use, can be hacked into, where, you know, RFAs, for one thing, if someone really wanted to be devious, could send RFAs to just get you confused. So it's just a matter of, you know, this cyber thing, depending on who wants to do certain things, it's there for them to do, and we just have to be very careful, and we have to make sure we have protections to all of this stuff.
Well, this brings up another reason to have a virtual cyber security test range, where these issues can be checked, hacking can be checked, people's reaction to them, and even response to those. Once again, it's very similar to what we need to do in the world of UAVs. We do it in airplanes today. I think we have another question coming in. If you can put it up on the prompter here. Is there an emergency management control center right now? And where is it if there is one? So I think that goes to you, sir.
Well, every county has an emergency operations center, and the state of Hawaii has its own emergency operations center in Diamond Head. So the plan going forward now is really to build a larger, more high-tech, sophisticated joint emergency management center, combining with the city and the state, and put in the latest technologies. Because probably by the time we got it built, these technologies will be old. But also incorporate in that a cyber operations center. And people wonder why this and emergency management, because if you start taking down industrial controls, the kinetic effect will create some other problems, which could be pandemic, could be, you know, people loss of electricity, and that's then your emergency managers need to get involved. So again, it's an interrelationship of all of this.
So once again, it's the interdependencies and the understanding of their criticality and the soft points that, and the training, the recognition that something's happening. Once again, virtual test ranges for this sort of thing are what the answer is. They could be used 24/7 on them. I mean,
well, even you know, as we talked about a cyber range, I look at it as a gymnasium where you're going to go there and actually compete against one another. Because you know, we all know that we can academically get all A's and just regurgitate information. But in the world of cyber, you're actually defending against something that's happening, and those are important. You need to actually practice it. It's very similar to any basketball team, volleyball team, or football team. You got offense and defense.
Let's take a bit of a break here, but when we come back after the break, let's talk about that very issue of a cyber test range and how that might manifest itself here, and from the perspective that Arnold brings, and we'll ask John to collaborate on it as well in 30 seconds.
Hi, my name is Seymour Kazimirski. I have a show called Seymour's World on ThinkTech Hawaii. Our show is about opening minds and facilitating conversations. To tell you the truth, I have no idea what we're going to be talking about. I have no idea who our guests are going to be, but I guarantee you we're going to have lots and lots of fun. Aloha from Seymour's World.
Friday afternoon, folks. Welcome to the last segment of our show here, Where the Road Leads. And in this particular episode, we're talking about Cyber in Paradise. Those who know about this program recognize that the program is defined once again by the people we have on it, and we have never topped this panel. This is a fantastic panel. General Wong, Arnold Kishi, and John Mullen talking about a really important subject, cyber, that we've worked our way into. I just want to point out that you can send questions in. I think we have one that's going to show up in a minute here, but also I always like to ask our guests at the end of this segment what their greatest return would be for having participated in this particular show, what they would like to have the audience have understood, and then we can use that to take forward and generate new programs. But just as we were at break last time, we were talking about the notion of the technical aspects of a cyber security test range that would allow human in the loop, equipment in the loop, and pure simulation to understand how these things all play together. And sir, you brought up the issue of the social side of this thing with the lawyers, the legal system, and probably even the medical system or something needs to be added into that mix as well. So give a few words of wisdom about how a cyber test range might be put together, who would participate, someone's going to pay for it. Supercomputer comes to mind. We got a few of them around here. And let's have your thoughts on that, and then we'll pick up what Arnold sees it, and then ask John what his thoughts are.
So the concept is to build a cyber range in a SCIF, which is in a secure area. So you can do actual DHS or NSA or FBI can tell you what types of attack on industrial systems can come if we just use Hawaiian Electric, the grid, because it's something that everyone is aware of nationwide. So we would actually get from DHS the types of cyber attacks that are potentially going to come. And HECO or any company could bring their defenders in there and actually defend against it and see where they might need to strengthen, or they may already be strong. But it's doing the actual defense against an actual thing versus an academic exercise. This is a real attack that could come based on what DHS, NSA, or the FBI knows.
So you take the threats from the intelligence agencies and then turn them into a simulated attack, perhaps a couple hours long, do this repetitive training on a monthly basis or something like that. And so this becomes not just a one-shot deal, this becomes a continuously operating awareness system. How would you actually execute that, Arnold, since it'll fall to you to hook the wires together?
Right. Well, actually, it's already been executed to some extent. General Wong, with his strong support 2 years ago, started to work with the University of Hawaii to develop the foundation of a cyber range, as we're discussing right now. And this provides the setting, the virtual infrastructure for different organizations, different teams, different groups, technical and non, to participate in an exercise like this so they can see actually how a real attack might occur. So
this is fantastic. And so could we reach to like the case of Waimanalo, could we reach through HART and get a community involvement of some kind here to begin connecting the awareness? I mean, I have no idea how we'd even know, how do you even measure an attack? I mean, I got something on my cell phone here. I don't know if it's just me, if it's a systemic thing happening to other people, if it's an error on my part, or is it some malicious input, or, as John will tell us, I may not even know my cell phone's in use in some form of an attack. So really the vigilance aspect needs awareness in order to be vigilant. And so how do we take the cyber range, that even as it exists today, and express that to say the HARP leaders as a start, or something like that?
I think the cyber range, in conceptually, what we look at, might be at a level much higher than that. But you could bring them and just show them what a potential cyber attack can do to their community, to their own personal computers, or to something of significance to them.
That would be an eye-opener, wouldn't it? Do you think? I think we need to, this is, Margie, another thing for HART.
Because everyone's going to say, I don't believe they can do that.
Yeah, right, okay.
Right. And Arnold knows they can do that.
and John probably knows they can do that. John, what are your thoughts?
Well, interesting. We were the subject matter experts for the DARPA National Cyber Range for Lockheed Martin on the East Coast, big one. And we put that together for a couple years with them. And we've also built Navy exact lookalikes to Navy networks and then launched attacks against them 24/7 for months and months and months. And then you observe the results, observe what happens. So we don't simulate attacks, we launch live attacks. But we do use, to save money and to save time, a lot of time, is if you can virtualize the networks and the virtual machines in your lab, then you can change things very quickly. If you've got a physical, like you say, a supercomputer and all these IP addresses, every time you change a test, it takes days, sometimes weeks, and sometimes even months, just to change from one test to another. If you're virtualized and you can basically with Cloud Stack or something like it, have virtual networks, virtual routers, virtual switches, and virtual machines, you can change experiments in a matter of 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You can take a snapshot of where anything is, put it in the back pocket, do something else, come back later and bring it back forward right away. So the design of a cyber lab, cyber range is very important. It can cost a lot of money. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. So, but also what you're trying to get done. What I would tend to do, and I'm not sure it's the same thing, I would make as close as possible a mirror image of your critical networks, your power, your water, and how they connect to each other. And then I would launch live attacks against them all the time and watch where they hold, where they break. And then I would beef up the defenses at those spots.
So people have done that before. Folks like John have been there. You've been there. We're starting down that path. Maybe we can keep this partnership going. And I will say that John is a participant with us in JIFIX, the Joint Interagency Field Experimentation that Naval Postgraduate hosts. Next episode will be in February in San Francisco. And it would be great to get somebody from the Gaurd or from the virtual range up to be part of that coming up in February. And we'll be doing, I think we'll be doing maritime domain awareness attacks on shipping in San Francisco Bay, Alameda area. The old Pan Am seaplane base. And no more seaplanes at the Pan Am seaplane base. And so we'll tie that together. So we got a couple things we can tie together here over this next interval of time. I think Zuri has told us there's another question. Is that right, Zuri? Another question from the audience. How fast could we get an emergency food supply from the mainland? Oh my goodness, who would arrange delivery? Whoa. How about even how fast could we get it from Oahu to Maui? Or from, even better yet, from Maui to Oahu?
Well, let me kind of tell you what we're planning to do now. You know, we're planning to map the whole supply chain management of food. So say you take any of the big box stores, or you're talking about Safeway, KT, or anything, you know, how do they get the food on the shelf? You know, we're talking about once it gets to the ports or across the sea or even on the West Coast, because the West Coast strike or West Coast storm could affect. So we're going to map that whole thing. So when you ask how fast it takes, we'll really look at and define it so that we can understand every link of the way in the supply chain management of bringing a bag of rice here to the state of Hawaii, which is a food staple, how important that is. So that is something we're studying now. We're going to study.
Okay, so we'll know what that's.
That could be another discussion.
Another item of discussion at this very table as time goes on. We used to have warehouses around here, right, with stuff in them.
There is.
Okay. I trust you've answered the question of the questioner there. We don't have that answer quite yet, but it's going to be evolving. And in fact, as the commerce changes, as the big box stores show up, as the mom and pops but as local farming builds up, this question will always be changing. So we need to revisit this a lot and include it in the model, right? We're getting close to the end of our allocated time period here. I wanted to see if I can ask the three of you in reverse order here, John, Arnold, and then the General, what your hopes for the takeaway the audience has from this conversation today, and what other steps you might think we might want to put out here at the table and have discussions on. John, if you want to start that ball rolling.
Sure. Well, I'm very impressed with everything I've heard here, so you guys are doing a great job. I think the community there in Hawaii, from what I know of it, would really benefit from this increased knowledge, increased awareness, and as you were saying, Ted, the interaction and the awareness from both the programs and the experiments that you're doing. And so I think tying the community there and gaining more of awareness would be what I would hope would be the best outcome of this. Because as we said earlier, it's vigilance and it's collaboration, not just computers that are making this happen.
So understanding at the community level, measured in vigilance, and measured in quick response would be then pushing information up the line would be what John is telling us would be good. Arnold?
Well, having worked in emergency management and disaster preparedness, when you're looking at natural disasters or other kinds of physical damage, the same model can apply to cybersecurity. You're looking at an all full community response because everyone has a role in this. So we have posters over many buildings around town that says cybersecurity is everyone's business. And it is.
So cybersecurity, which is not commonly appreciated by the folks yet, we need to see that as it correlates to something we can see, which is the physical infrastructure, and begin tying those together and begin thinking of common approaches. And once again, it's awareness, it's going to be community involvement and continuous involvement, and probably K through 12 program elements and academic stuff at the university. Sir?
No, Ted, I first want to thank you for linking us up with John. I think this could be a long-term relationship. So, John, we really value your opinion and would love to work with you more. On my side, again, programs like these, just building the awareness in the community of cyber, and as Arnold was saying, it's not really something that is real technical. It can be very basic. So I think, the human is not the technology that's the single point of failure. It's the human being and how you use this technology is going to be the single point of failure. And understanding at your most basic level, even in the communities and your own home computer, as Arnold was saying, could be the link to create other things. Even at your work computer, you may go into a site that you shouldn't and really bring in malware, bring in some type of thing that could ruin your company. These are the kind of things you need to really understand.
So we need to focus on the human element here. That's where it starts and that's where it ends. We go through a bridge in the middle that's technology, but it starts and ends with the human piece, which is awareness, vigilance, and the human values that we think of. I wanted to thank very much our three guests for being on today. We've talked about the vision of the possible, the vision of the likely, and how that all ties into the future, which is where the road leads. John Mullen in San Francisco, I think from what General Wong said, we'll have you back on, maybe have you out here would be a good idea. Arnold from the infrastructure industry, the emergency management business, and InfoGuard, which is the information sharing piece at the intelligence community. Thank you very much, sir. And General Wong, always a pleasure. Your vision is incredible, and I just never stop learning from sitting next to this gentleman and talking to him and enjoying your big picture understanding and your ability to express it. And competing in paddling too, by the way. So I thank you very much, folks. Ted Ralston, host for our show Where the Road Leads. There will not be a show next Friday after Thanksgiving. We're taking a Thanksgiving break, but back on after that. So we'll see you all. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Where the Road Leads.